The ACN podcast is made possible thanks to the generosity of our listeners and sponsors, including the Agile Alliance. As a nonprofit membership organization, the Agile Alliance is an excellent resource to help you along your Agile journey. To learn more about the Agile Alliance and our other sponsors, as well as how you can become a sponsor or supporter of our show, please visit acnpodcast.org for more information. And thank you for your support. Hey, good morning and good evening, everyone. This is the Agile Coaching Network. I know that we said we weren't going to do a December show, but we have the privilege of being in Amsterdam this week with the Supporting Agile Adoption group, which is a part of the Agile Alliance. If you don't know who the Agile Alliance is, hey, go look at agilealliance.org. It's a member-driven organization, and these groups getting together is a part of what the community is about. It's about us making Agile better. And just to sort of kick off a slightly different format, today we're going to be talking about, it's kind of similar since it's the holiday seasons. You know, you've got the 12 days of Christmas. We're going to be talking about the 12 principles of Agile. So with that, we've got the principles in front of us here today, and we're going to just strike up a conversation about what these mean to us and how we see them manifesting themselves into the corporations that we work with and for. And let's go ahead and take it away. So if we could we can get some introductions of each of the people that are here today. Just go around the room. If you could start, Hendrik.
Yeah. I'm Hendrik Esser. I work for Ericsson, a very large telecom company, and there I work as a manager for special projects.
I'm Jutta Eckstein, and I work as an independent coach, consultant, and author, and I'm based in Germany.
I'm Jens Coldewey. I'm working with Improve, a small consulting firm in Munich, Germany. So I started 3 years before the manifesto with Agile, so I still remember getting that email.
Hi, my name is Bjarte Bogsnes. I'm the chairman of the Beyond Budgeting Roundtable. I also work for a company called Equinor, formerly called Statoil.
My name is Eric Abelem. I work at ING Bank. I have the role of Agile coach. ING Bank has a worldwide presence in retail and wholesale, and we have made the decision to adopt the Agile work style globally.
Hello, this is Boris Kneisel from Germany, former SAP Director of Agile Adoption, by now founder of Arontex, the Agile Innovation Consultancy, small boutique.
Hi, I'm Marcin Floryan, and I'm currently working for Spotify as a tech tribe lead looking after the playback stack of Spotify.
And I'm Jorgen Hesselberg. I'm the co-founder of Comparative Agility and also an author of Unlocking Agility.
Thank you all for being here today. I'm going to go ahead and start off with probably the most controversial thing first. And that's this word, as we go through the Agile principles, this word software seems to be all over this document.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So what is our perspective now that we're how many years from the manifesto being originally published? We're a decade?
15?
Yeah.
No,
16 years.
16 years.
Nearly 70.
We clearly can't count.
Nearly 70.
2001.
So does anyone want to take on just
Nearly 18.
starting to talk about that word software, and really is that the word that should be in place there now today?
So in our company, we just ignore that. I mean, for us, agility is really a question of transforming a company. And we have hardware developers, we have software developers, we have people working in sales functions and so on. And actually, there's so much value behind in these principles, and that, yeah, they are universal. So we just ignore that it was originally maybe written for software. This is enough inspiration for helping us also in a transformation of other pieces of the company.
But then, what do you think about the working software being the primary measure of progress?
And then you need to think for yourself. What does working software mean when you're a salesperson?
You know, this is for me kind of an obvious thing, because the reason for working software as a primary measure of progress is because software really tells the truth. Anything else doesn't. So with everything else, you can fake it. But the software will show, does it work or not? So the way I regard this is transparency. And whatever you do, you have to ensure transparency.
I view that as a kind of risk oriented thing, because non-working software you want to deliver is a risk that you won't deliver on time. Working software is no risk anymore because you know you can deliver. And then you can mostly easily, sometimes not that easily, map that to other things. If you're building hardware, what is the risk you're still going to? And how much risk have you mitigated? The problem with the risk rather than working software is that working software is pretty digital. Either it works or it doesn't. Risk mitigated is again open for tweaking.
I would like to build on what Jutta was saying, that transparency, because if transparency, then perhaps transparency becomes the measure of progress, the levels of how much transparency do we have in an environment as a primary measure of progress. I think that's an interesting one.
Well, for me, it's more with transparency, you are able to measure something. So only if you make transparent where you are, you can actually do something about that. And it's looking at in the field you are in, what is it that you need to make transparent here in order to make an informed decision. But I know Bjarte really wants to say something.
I think you guys are complicating things here. I mean, honestly, Agile was born in software development. No wonder the word software is in there. No, Agile is growing out of software development, and of course we need a discussion about that word. And I see it as I can understand that some people see it as a constraint.
Well, I think it is an opportunity to learn. And that's how I see this. Working software, it gives you something that you can validate. Is this working? Is it not working? Are we on the right path? Are we not? We can iterate and we can increment. And that to me is what working software represents here. But Bjarte is totally right. We have to consider the time that this was done. And we always say the Agile Manifesto, but it really is the Agile Manifesto for software development, isn't it? I mean, it has software in its title. So yeah, let's embrace that and recognize that that's what it is, but doesn't mean we can't evolve.
And the evolvement is there. There's the marketing manifesto, the Agile HR manifesto, there might be others by now. So taking the same perspective but then projecting it in different areas. Do we need it as a specific manifesto? I'm not sure, but it's the thought that counts.
And I think it's healthy for organizations to take and read, this is a historical document that if you read it in the context and when it was written, sure, it fit for its day. To now, as you go into your own Agile adoptions, you should read this document and then transpose it into your own words that make it realize the intent of what we were trying to do with these principles in the first place. At Intel, we actually started to put in the word working solutions because for us, a solution was both a software product, a hardware product, anything that we were actually committing to a customer to help fix one of their problems.
I'd like to jump on to something Jutta has said, that this is about transparency. And I think it's really important to understand what the meaning behind that was at that time. The primary measure of progress at that time was conformance to plan, as measured in Gantt charts. And this is not a measure of progress. This is probably a measure of how good or bad you're with estimations. That's all.
And also,
so the core thing here is really to say, okay, there's something we need to deliver, and this is the primary thing.
And it's nice to not lose track of the fact that the outcomes that we want to deliver sometimes are not about working software, which just accumulates in the source code repository or even being released but some learning or some value to the users of that software. Boris?
Yes, and also I would like to relate to the situation that these principles, they don't come isolated. They relate to each other, so trying to connect the dots. I could see that this working software one as the primary measure of progress actually opens a feedback loop that goes back to the one that is about high priority being about satisfying customers. So actually it is an enabling function. So the transparency is enabling a better feedback loop that allows for iterative and incremental ongoing development.
Just one more reflection on, because now we are looking at the 12 principles, but you also have the 4 statements, or what do you call it?
Values.
And when I look at those and compare it to the beyond budgeting principles, I see a lot of similarities, a lot of the same spirit. I sense some of the same when I look at these principles here, but it somewhat disappears. So we heavily relate to Agile in the Beyond Budgeting community, but our reference is more those 4 statements, and especially the one, of course, responding to changeover following a plan.
Yeah, I totally agree. And one thing that I think is interesting is the principles were not made in a co-located way. The values came together. Everyone was in the same room. The principles came afterwards, the next 10 or 2 weeks after that. So it was kind of done piecemeal. It was not done in the same way. And I've listened to a lot of the signatories say that they're not always as proud of the principles as they were of the values. I think the values stand up. And it was a result of this really intense face-to-face communication. Principles were a little bit of a, I don't want to say afterthought, but it was kind of that next level, which happened through email and other type of non-synchronous communication, and sometimes you don't get that same. I don't think they stand up as well as the values. I agree with that.
So you don't think they're aging as well as the?
They are a different level of abstraction, and by definition, because of that, it doesn't appeal to as many contexts. But I think the values are the ones that I always look at as the genius part of it, not just because of the values, but the way they're written. It's one over the other.
But it sounds like the principles actually capture that story a little bit when they talk about the efficiency of face-to-face conversations.
Yes,
right?
They do.
I like that.
They do.
Exactly.
Last one.
So let's go ahead and dig in just a little bit deeper. And as an Agile coach, one of the things that I've noted over, my entire career as being a coach, if I go to the last principle that's here, which is at regular intervals, teams basically reflecting on their work and adjusting their behaviors accordingly, I personally see, and I don't mean to bait this in a negative direction, I'd love to hear positive stories as well, but I tend to see teams that are always, yes, they do retrospect, but they don't respond to the retrospective. They have long living problems that they seem to admire their problems quite a bit of the time. Every retrospective, let's admire it a little bit more, and then let's put it back in the box, and then admire it the next time we have a retrospective. What are other people's beliefs, and what do they feel about this principle, and how do they see it working in their organizations?
So I think the biggest problem with this principle is that there are so few people who know really how to run retrospectives. I've seen so many bad retrospectives where it was just a collection of plus and minuses, and then they said like, okay, we have the list of minuses, so let's just stop doing those. And then they went apart, and of course nothing will change, and then it comes that admiring again those things the next time, because, well, how could something change? So the biggest problem I'm seeing is that the retrospectives haven't been understood really.
Yeah, I agree, and this is the one thing that stands up the greatest. In fact, when we look at patterns and we look at the correlation between how teams work and the outcomes that they achieve, there's actually a statement that we have that is around having regular retrospectives and actually taking action on them in a timely manner. Because it's not just about having the ceremony or doing the retrospective, it's actually taking action on the outcomes of that retrospective.
Exactly.
And doing that consistently. And I think, Ray, you're right. This is one of those things that I think very often goes in a way. When people start using agile ways of working, the retrospective sometimes doesn't get the love it deserves because it doesn't have anything to do with the product per se. It has everything to do about how we work. And we sort of forget that. But that is probably the most important thing if you want to be agile.
Yes.
And I think one observation also is that, especially when you're young in your agile adoption, this is something that is executed in a sort of ritual with, in our case and in many companies, with software development teams. What is often forgotten is that this is a very general principle, and this also applies for leadership teams, for example.
Absolutely.
I mean, reflecting on what is a leadership team of a product development organization, for example, maybe they are not delivering software themselves, but they are delivering an organism, an organization that is capable of delivering a software. So you need to have organizational system retrospectives. You need to think what kind of emerging patterns do we see in our organization. And that links back to what you, Ray, said. Sometimes people are admiring their problem, they're not overcoming their problems, and often this is an indicator that in the system something is not working out. It hinders the people to go beyond certain problems. And that's a good case for me to look at, repetitive, the same thing comes up from the same team. What is in the system that hinders this team to grow beyond?
It's an interesting side remark historically that at that time the two most popular approaches, Extreme Programming and Scrum, had no retrospectives built in at that time. So they came later into that.
But Norm's book came out at the time the manifesto was created, and I think that's why
And
made it into it.
I think Alistair Coburn was the first one to actually put the focus on feedback and retrospectives and making the team a learning organization.
Well, and Jim.
And Jim Highsmith, of course, yeah. So these were two more. Well, if you're interested in the history, you know them, but it's not. It wasn't mainstream at that time.
Yeah.
And today, this is actually what one of the most powerful parts of being agile.
Yeah. Well, agile is not something you become; it's something you become more of. And if you don't have the retrospective helping you along the way to inspect and adapt, then that's going to be difficult.
I really like the point that you made, Henrik, because there is something that we have to be able to recognize in our organizations when there are systemic problems that stop teams from progressing with that learning. And one of the things, the patterns that I have seen over time is that teams fall into the trap of this thing called learned helplessness.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Where they feel like we're just not able to influence that in any way. This has always been like this. We'll just look at our problems again and carry on.
So here I want to share one of my tricks. So this is one of Jutta's secrets.
Listen carefully.
I will only say this once.
That's true, so you can't listen to it twice. So whenever that happens, what I do is I use something that's called paradox intervention. So I learned that in coaching. And so what you do there is asking the team, how can they make the situation worse?
Okay, cool.
And you work on that. And just by reflecting on how can you make it worse, often that opens up already something because it's fun. It's kind of, maybe it's sometimes also mean because people get cynical and so on, but it's fun, first of all. Well, and then there comes me and Jutta, sorry for that. Now my secret is open here. Then I say, okay, if you can make it worse, you know what? You can also make it better. So just like how do you react and respond to this system around you, and that can influence that system as well. So that's Jutta's little secret.
Fantastic.
And I think this is another link to Beyond Budgeting, because Beyond Budgeting, which is basically about business agility, it is about removing many of those impediments. It is about addressing many of the systemic problems that is a barrier for Agile. So, I mean, there's so much in common, but still there is something with the language. I mean, if you put the 12 principles in front of a CEO that is cold and agile and told you here's the way to manage your organization, they might be intrigued, but certainly quite confused, right? So it's something about kind of lifting this to what does it mean for running an organization, and this is where again we're coming from. Beyond Budgeting, it's about how to run an organization in an agile way, and the combination of this is so extremely powerful. So the more we can offer this complete offering to the organization, upstairs and out in the line, the more powerful this will become.
Yeah.
If I may use that as a transition point, one of the other principles basically states that business people and developers must work together daily. And one of the things that I've found is this has been the problem I've been working on in the Agile Alliance since I've joined as a staff member. And what I've noted is what you just brought up. We're talking over one another. We're using different language. We have different priorities of what we think value is. You know, the CEO knowing that they need to have value for the shareholder. How does that now translate down to what we're doing in the development team? That stuff tends to get confused. And so for this particular principle, how do you guys see this manifesting in your organization? And if you see things that are broken, which ways how do you approach this so that it's not agile as what they do over there in development, but it's agile as what we do as an organization, as a way that we're trying to drive value with our customers? Anyone want to start on that?
Ray, is there The interesting thing I see looking at this particular principle is how it's stated. It almost is built into the formulation of it, this duality or this conflict between business and developers. And it's super interesting to see how this dynamic changes when you come from an organization like mine that has only had technology or software in the beginning. So it was almost impossible to think of anyone as something else. There was only one team. That has a profound effect. So I very much agree that, like, if we can unify that and look holistically at the organization and its agility transition.
And what's interesting about that is that the early day stories of Intel, when it was founded back over in the 1960s, the stories that I hear from Andy Grove and the rest of the founding team sounded like Spotify. You know, and I'm just wondering where we lose it along the way. Jorgen?
Well, it's a natural way of working, but I think what's starting to happen is that, you know, with the DevOps movement and sort of shifting left and all those kind of things, I was visiting a large Norwegian bureaucratic organization by definition, but they have changed dramatically. Nav, and one of the things that they were talking about there is that they were half joking, talking about sort of eliminating the IT department, in the sense that, not to get rid of those people, but to say we don't need an IT department. We are just a department doing work. And why do we have to even have IT? There's no thing that we do anymore that doesn't involve technology. So why don't we just kind of say that we're a company and we do this work, and we don't have to separate, just like you were saying, Marcin. You don't have to separate into business people and technical people. It's a false dichotomy anyway.
I see exactly the same thing. And I see also that, for a surprise for me, that very often the teams in IT who run Agile for quite some time struggle the most with that, because they are so much into, like, okay, well, we talk to the business, that's the product owner, and not really understanding that this is not the business. And I have as well clients, because of digitalization, saying it doesn't make sense anymore to have an IT department because our core product is software, no matter what people think our product is or was in the past, if it's a car or whatever, any bank applications or something, but the core differentiator from one product to the other is software. And therefore, having a specific IT department doesn't make much more sense anymore.
It's about collaboration, right?
Yeah.
What I also like in this principle, business and developers working together daily throughout the project. So this is about ongoing communication, and that's, for me, the key.
I think collaboration is the key point in here. Most problems are not technical nature. If you look at what is technically possible today, it's just mind-blowing for someone like me who has learned to program in the early 90s. So it's not a technical problem, it's how people work together. And
There's this famous Cher Weinberg quote, actually. It's never a technical problem.
Yeah,
I think
right.
that's exactly what he said.
And this reflects that. This is about everybody has to collaborate in that, and on a daily basis, and not based on some weird plans that don't go out anywhere.
Talking about God or religion in general, I mean, I think...
How did we get there?
Speaking not
Christmas
controversial.
No, but I mean, I think it is dangerous to read stuff by the letter, whether it's religious text or the Agile Manifesto. I think you have to kind of look behind the words and the intention behind.
Yes.
And then when I do that, this becomes much more lively when I can look kind of beyond the software world, the developer world, and so on. And again, then if you look at the intentions behind, the Agile Manifesto and the Beyond Budgeting Principles almost become one.
Yeah. But that's also why they are called principles in my mind.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah, they work as a great compass from that aspect. Do you want to pivot to another one, or do you want to?
Yeah, there is another aspect of this that we haven't touched, and that is, I like this notion of, hey, this says there is a divide between business people and developers, and especially when you think about very large companies, often you put sections apart from each other, the business experts and the development experts and so on. And one thing that I've seen is that these organizational structures, they impose certain boundaries. Partly I think people need them because people have a need for belonging. Yeah, so people love, that was a discussion we once had with Dave Snowden. He said, actually, silos are unavoidable. We're always raving about the silos, but they form themselves because people have a need for belonging. Then the question is more like what containers or what kind of context you put a group of people together. And that's why I think the notion of a cross-functional team is so important in this respect. And cross-functional team does not necessarily mean what we have done, being focused on software development. Oh, we need the architect, the software developer, and the tester in the team, and the DevOps engineer, whatever that is.
Yes.
But also maybe the business person in the team. Yeah? So somehow we forgot that.
I like to put some 2 cents into this as well. I believe that at the moment, most of the companies that are out there still have this notion of optimizing for resource utilization. And that is one of the potential explanations why there is the current kind of silos. So
I'm not a resource, though. I'm a human.
yes, luckily some of us have understood that. What I was about to say is that maybe the next level of more clever cutting into silos is potentially the way to cut silos with respect to product life cycles or technological life cycles, and then have these co-located and cross-functional teams, because it actually is reducing complexity. Because you would only have to concentrate on your own path of technology that you're in and the people that actually accompany you in the organization and within the market. That is your competition, if you want.
Boris, that sounds exactly the way you've just described the way Spotify is organized.
Actually, I think one problem we are having with the silos is that we look at org charts and think this is the only way how we should work together.
Right.
And that, at least I hope and I believe, was never the intention. Yeah. It's just one way of kind of categorizing. Well, it could be belonging, it could be any kind of category you make up with in order to get along with a lot of people. But it never meant, at least again, I hope so, that this is the only way you're allowed to work together. And this is the probably the trap we have to overcome, and we have to think differently about that. And it's not a bad thing to have an org chart like that. The bad thing is that we take it as like the only truth.
Yes, and the thing is, an org chart imposes a belonging. It's an architected belonging, and that causes the problem, I think, in many cases, because I've seen people going, we reorganize, we restructure, people who have been working together for many years, they end up in two different departments, and all of a sudden, over the next half year, they stop talking to each other. And this is...
Because they think we are not supposed to work together anymore, and that's the thing.
And may I take the opportunity to point out that we're kind of crossing into the space of the best architectures and requirements and designs emerge from self-organizing teams, and if what you just described is that if an architecture of organizational design should emerge from what it is and purpose that we're trying to do people maybe somehow silo this too much on the product and not on also the organizational system that we need to create in order to deliver that solution to the customer?
It sounds like you're trying to project the Conway's law here.
Yes.
Which is something that actually we've been talking a lot at Spotify about. This notion that the structure of the systems that build mimics the structure of the organization. And you can actually, as I heard it called, the reverse Conway maneuver, and organize your organization or structure your organization in a way that you want your systems to be structured. This can be super effective.
Can I ask you a question, and you can describe it to the people on the call? You're wearing a great tribe shirt right now. What is on this right now?
So the shirt has a little logo, which is green, of course, and has lots of gear wheels, but that are shaped as a little heart, because we believe that the tribe that I'm working in is like the heart of Spotify, provides the essential components, and it's been put like that exactly here for that reason.
And would you ever burn that shirt?
No.
No. So that's your identity thing that you were talking about, Hendrik, which is you create symbols and reinforce structures through rituals that you create, to the point that you want to self-associate with that team.
That's all about belonging, absolutely.
Yeah.
I would like to appear on, like you mentioned, that now that we moved on to the next principle, and that Hendrik said, like, well, the thing is that people have been put into the different silos. And so for me, there a key thing which isn't done enough is, well, why not using an open space way of self-selecting teams? And you still come up with something like that, right? You still come up with kind of whatever you can call them, silos or whatever you want to call them, but then the belonging is self-selected and it's around producing a value.
But you know why we don't do that? Because we're scared, because we ignore the principle that states that we should build our projects around motivated individuals.
I could have put a bet that this is the one you would point out. Yeah, actually, whenever I have done that, so I have done this with several clients, and I know the first time we did this, I was really scared. I really thought, well, this will never work out, and there is this one thing we know for sure nobody wants to work on. You know, you sometimes have these things, right? Yeah. It didn't happen. People sorted it out. They were responsible, and they kind of at first they thought like, well, I work here and there, and then they figured, oh no, probably I'm not really needed there, but there is really my help needed. So they are responsible, and I think Bjarte has a lot to share about responsible people and how we often treat them.
Oh, well, I just have a reflection on what you said about the problems with the kind of hierarchical organizational structure. I'm also afraid of these organization charts that looks like a pyramid. If you look at the Equinor organization chart, it would look very traditional, but it doesn't tell the whole story. It says nothing about all the collaboration taking place vertically. It says nothing about the low power distance. And so it doesn't have to be a big issue if you kind of compensate with the right culture and mindset.
I think this is an important point. Many, especially managers, believe that the org chart is the truth, and that you need to have an architect in a team in order to have an architecture, which is BS. Because, every single developer does architecture with every line of code they...
Well, and an architect based on the job description.
Right, based on the job description. Yeah. So it's the idea can design an organization on a sheet of paper by shifting resources. And this doesn't really work out. It's actually not what's happening. Even if they shift resources, companies still work despite all the attempts of the management to make that better. So, and I think this self-organization is an important thing in here, because that's often misinterpreted as autonomy, or just organize yourself, do whatever you want. And I like Maria Montessori's sentence there, who said, freedom is not about doing what you want, but about wanting what you do. And this is, I have to think about that every time I read that principle.
The one thing I always reflect upon is about how I should sometimes, and I know this is hard for me, to just be quiet, which is self-organization should take place with the team members. And as a coach, if I'm forcing people into self-organization versus I've done many a session where, okay, we need you to go through and do said project or said planning, and I'll set a pin down in the middle of the room, and I'll just step back, and we'll all have an uncomfortable staring session at that pin, like I'm supposed to pick it up or someone else, until some of the team members realize, oh, this is my project. It's not the coach's project. And I need to pick it up and start to organize my group. And sometimes I think the coach gets a little too pushy about, things that they do to cram people together, and that feels to me more like an old management style sometimes.
But there is a job though that those coaches could take, which is creating a set of constraints in which that self-organization can thrive. So when Jutta talked about people self-selecting for teams, when we've done that, we've actually been very careful in making it explicit of what are the constraints for the new teams we want to create. This team can't be bigger than that, and this team has to have at least 5 people with that skill.
We did that also the first time because we were scared, but the next time not anymore, because people know that they are responsible. I also want to add to what Jens said with the there needs to be an architect on that team. And why don't we trust that every developer knows about architecture? This
That was a quote.
Yeah. I know. And this goes for me also back to that thing that we keep coming up with the job descriptions and treat them as boxes where we put the people in instead of inviting everyone to look or seek for their full potential. And I think there is also a big learning that we still have to do or overcome or whatever, or a shift that needs to happen. That actually it's about the people, and it's not about and their potential, and not about the job description.
Yeah, but there's a complication around this one, and that is people want to have a representation of their progress in their career. People are asking for these things, and that drags along a number of things, like, okay, what career do I have? What job do I have actually, and how can I be a senior master principal software developer, and things like this. And then all of a sudden people are
That's
thinking
true.
about systems or career models, incentives, progressions in salaries, and all this stuff.
It needs more work, yeah.
This is
It's
a
not
very
like a
tricky
recipe
thing.
where people can follow along and they're climbing the ladder. It needs more work. Yeah.
We're all viewing companies way too much as machines, and this is a 19th century approach. We need to understand them as living superorganisms of individuals, and with each and every change in the company, the superorganism changes. And all we can do, actually, or we should do, is try to give direction. Not on a detailed thing, but really alignment on goals, on visions, and let people run.
Let's kind of go diving into a couple of other ones that I've seen as problem children in certain organizations. And this one's going to focus purely on the developers, because I've seen this look come on a developer's face when the requirement is changing near the release, and they almost look like, you know, they're going to lose their minds because the customer finally saw the product, and then the customer says, hey, you know, it would be even better if, and that requirement change comes in, and you could just see all of the developers spewing about the lines of code and architecture that needs to change. How do people see in your organizations today? Is it a welcoming change of requirements, or is there something here that's a little difficult for people because we might not have the methods?
I think that this one largely actually relates to a couple of other entries in the 12 Principles section with respect to this continuous attention, technical excellence, and good design, enhancing agility. You might argue that if the infrastructure is right, then welcoming change late is an easy step and just creates a smile because of the chance of making the customer even more happy. But if that whole infrastructure is more like a painful process to go through when releasing stuff to the market, and you actually would like to do it almost only once a year, there's one saying that is, if it's painful, just do it more often. But it actually may change lots of stuff in the background and the backbone of the organization and the whole technical infrastructure.
To me, this is probably the most outdated of these 12 principles, because this notion of requirements, there's still a picture in there of developers developing requirements of business people. And this is a kind of order delivery thing, and great teams shouldn't implement requirements, they should deliver great products. And if they figure out that the great product is a little bit different than they thought some days ago, so what? And if they figure out that the new change is so cool that it's worth to miss this deadline of the trade fair show, yeah, it's their decision. And this is why the business people and the developers have to work together, because everybody needs to contribute to good decisions like that.
And I think the KR system or the OKR system needs to comprehend the other option, which is, so you took a key result that says that you're going to have this build or this particular demo done by this particular time. Okay, well that's not going to come true, and you're worried about your reward you're not going to get for that because you put it into your financial incentives. How do you change it so that you actually also get the benefit of you did the right thing? not that you've followed that plan that you had made 6 months ago.
Enter beyond budgeting.
Yeah, we waited for that.
By the way, this is not an agile.
We have a very clear and strong principle addressing reward, not recommending individual bonus, but going for rewarding shared success. Right? And it's once again one of these systemic things that is very often the elephant in the room, the incentive system, and you have to address that as well. And that kind of takes me back to listening to the discussion. You talk a lot about the need for developers and business talking together and kind of being on the same place. But there is a third dimension in this dialogue, and it is back to the guys upstairs in finance and HR who runs. Yeah, we are upstairs too often. I mean, it's right and
Interesting.
and
That is interesting.
well, I'm talking about our functions, independent of where we are sitting. But the point is that we represent the third dimension here, which also needs to be part of that dialogue. Because unless kind of we together kind of change these and address these systemic problems, I'm not just talking about individual bonus. I'm talking about annual, traditional, detailed budgets. I'm talking a lot about all the stupidity taking place, imposed by finance or HR. And unless that's addressed as well, I mean, you guys will never succeed. We will never achieve what we really want to happen.
I like when we get you fired up. This is great.
It's not
Well, and I
difficult.
absolutely agree. I think it's a kind of a basic belief thinking that we can use Agile for making organizations agile. If we think about organizational agility or maybe business agility, we have to think beyond Agile. And beyond budgeting is one of the things that needs to be in place there.
Yeah, and let's be careful about the words we use, because we talk about stupidity of things that happen in other functions like finance or HR. Let's please realize ourselves that they are part of an ecosystem with that has demands on that ecosystem. So I oppose that word. It's those functions function within their reality and need to play along the rules. What I would like to turn the discussion to is the feedback loop. How do we organize the discourse within an enterprise in such a way that it's not them and us, but that it's us together?
Before we take that one, Eric, I disagree. I think it is way too easy for us to kind of blame that there are some kind of constraints out there. I think it's our damn duty to challenge a lot of the things. Challenge the guiding and the communication towards the market, and challenge a lot of
There has never been a better opportunity than right now with digitalization. That it's us challenging.
Yeah.
So.
I still believe. I mean, it is stupid things being done and promoted. Not stupid people, and there are reasons for it. But I mean, we have this duty to challenge. It's one of the Equinor values: challenge accepted truth. And it happens both in finance and HR, because I've been working both places. And it's not criticizing people in those functions. A lot of great people, but we have to be part of this the whole dialogue here.
Yeah. And my point is, those people are also caught in their system. So how can we free that up?
Yeah.
So sorry.
Well, that was good.
I think we do.
So we're getting almost to the top of the podcast hour. Let's kind of shift to another one that I've seen that's been rather difficult in most organizations, and especially with larger organizations. This notion of face-to-face communications. Is this outdated? Is face-to-face necessary in today's modern virtual organizations, or
Human psychology is never outdated.
No, trust is necessary.
So, I have been working with distributed teams for a long time. And how I go for it is I look at this principle and discuss it with the dispersed people and say, okay, if we want to be agile, and that's true, what can we do to make the best out of it? And of course, there's something like you can catch up a little bit on virtual connections, and there are tools that have been improved tremendously. So that's really true. Yet the thing, what Jens pointed out, well, human psychology is always true, or it's not outdated. That's true too. And the findings that I found in research is that the thing is actually the pheromones. As soon as we have an exchange there, the trust is built, and that's kind of the thing. And maybe virtual tools in the future will offer that. I see that kind of
So
coming.
you're saying we need video conversing with smell-o-vision?
Yes.
Yes.
Right. That's kind of what they say. The
I'm not
psychologists
sure
that
that's
this
the
is
right
the basis of the building the trust.
Okay.
Yeah.
But there's definitely, I see the pattern of the teams that work remotely effectively are the teams that have had chance to start together and spend enough time in the
agree.
same room.
Yeah,
That's
this is exactly
exactly-
my experience as
Yes,
well.
mine
It
too.
works when you bring the team together for a certain point and amount of time, so they can glue on more the person-to-person
Yes.
dimension.
Yeah.
And then when they split apart, go to their home countries or wherever they work, the collaboration is usually much
Because
better.
they've built up the trust.
They've built up,
And
but not only trust.
Yeah.
I think it's also
A
you
relationship.
get you have a relationship.
Yes.
You understand. Even if you
Just based
don't
on
trust the
trust.
person, you at least
Yeah.
know in which way you don't trust and how to interpret what this person is saying, and you are able to collaborate. Because hey, this is not. Everything is going to be honky-dory and kumbaya. We all have to like each other. I mean, actually want teams to not avoid the conflicts and bring the things on the
That's true.
table.
Yeah.
So, of course, in a trustful way.
The way-
I'm sorry. What I found is that the simple act of one face-to-face, the person returning, even myself, is that when that email now comes in, I can't ignore them.
Yeah.
Because I see their face,
Yes.
I remember the conversation, I remember understanding them a little bit deeper and their own concerns. And some of that comes through nonverbal communication, just the way that they came into the door for that first meeting sticks in your brain saying, I can't ignore this individual. I need to reach out and answer this email.
Yeah, the way I like to think about that is I like to be able to read someone's email in their own voice in my head.
Oh yes.
Yeah, that's
That's nice.
And what this also is telling us is that this doesn't come for free. Agility learning doesn't come for free. There might be a travel budget increase, there might be an infrastructure increase, whatever it is. It just doesn't happen by itself. And I think sometimes when people look at agility or agile or whatever improvement process or thinking as a cost-cutting measure, I think that is a huge mistake. And that, I think, has been some of the problems in the old movements. If you think of lean in the past, I think very often it's been viewed as kind of a cost-cutting Trojan horse.
Abused would be.
I think abused is a good word of looking at it, because that is not the point. And I think as we look at these things, it's going to require change. It's going to require probably also a different way of allocating budgets and
So
or,
I
or no
really-
budgets.
I really
funds, I should say.
like to quote here a colleague of, I guess, a lot of us can Pew. And he said, you have to pay for a face-to-face meeting no matter if you have it or not.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of
So-
what you're saying with the cost cutting, right?
I usually distinguish between two different things for the reasons for distributed teams. One is because you're working in an international market and you need people that are close to the local market to understand that. And these teams have to be distributed. And everything Jutta said is absolutely true, and all of you others.
Always, whatever I say is absolutely true. That's what you just said.
That's the default.
The other,
And there's another case that you
Yes,
want.
right.
and the second case is where companies think they can save money by offshoring, and this never pays off.
No, and I think that's
and the
now-
companies
yeah.
they just don't take the numbers up front because many of the managers are actually afraid to have their own decisions backed up or tested by numbers. So they don't go for experiments, they go for the big thing, and we are going to hire 1,000 people wherever. And this doesn't pay off, and this is just a fallacy. And companies who go that way, okay, have fun, but that's not agile.
Well, here's a recommendation in this space, and I did this with my finance controller, is I said that every time that we make a decision where we think we're saving money, I would like to, in our own retrospectives, think about the root cause of the problem that we're dealing with, and can we point it back to a decision that we had taken sometime in the past that actually cost us more than what we thought. And what we actually had found was when we dropped the face-to-face planning meetings, we dropped these other different rituals that we should have done, my finance person was really good at adding up the numbers of the requirements miss, the mistakes, everything else that we had in the system, so that when we actually walked into senior management in these meetings about was our decision right about not spending the several $1,000s for the face-to-face, cost us several $100,000 in lost market and opportunity costs. And that really grounded, I think, the conversation back into dollars and cents. We are almost at the top of the hour, and I want to shift gears to something that I think is really important. We are standing in a group of people called the Supporting Agile Adoption Group with the Agile Alliance, and it's been together since 2011? 2011, which is incredibly cool, and I've had the honor of actually being a part of this group for a number of years. And I just want to give you guys a chance and an opportunity. For one, you guys have a lot of information that's up on the Agile Alliance site. I know it's a bit of an Easter egg hunt. We're going to be working on ways of actually making sure that that Easter egg hunt is not there any longer. But I'd like just give us a pitch of what people should be looking for of the greatness and the output that's coming from this group.
So if you go to the Agile Alliance webpage, agilealliance.org, and go to initiatives, you will find the Supporting Agile Adoption Initiative. And on our webpage, you will find links to a number of white papers that this team has written over the years. More are going to be added. I can promise that just when I look at the workshop that we just had this weekend, amazing new stuff coming up. And on top of that, the members of this team have been speaking on a lot of conferences, agile conferences around the globe. You will find a lot of videos with really good content that is coming out of this team.
I think one thing we can say is that this is a group of practitioners, authors, thought leaders, but we're not salespeople. Again, that is not what you get here. So when you check out these resources, I think you'll find that this is coming from a point of view of sharing and not selling. And I think very often that is something that our community sometimes suffers from. I think it's very easy to find resources for things, but there's always an angle. Hey, but try this tool or try this service, and that's not the case here. And I think it's a safe environment in that sense.
What do you mean, safe environment?
You had to go there. You had to go there.
Well, and one thing to note in that, and this is the difference I think that most people don't fully understand about the Agile Alliance, is we're a nonprofit organization that's not trying to sell you a service. We are a community group that we're trying to go bring together people on an ongoing basis, and those interactions that we have, if you go to the conferences, they're constructed to get people together. If you look at these types of events, it's constructed to get people together, and out of those become great ideas.
Could I also add that if some of you are cold on beyond budgeting, got a bit intrigued now, there is a place where you can check it out more, bbrt.org. That's our homepage, a lot of great stuff as well.
And
business agility.
And they don't pay Bjarte.
And what we'll do is we'll include all of those links embedded into the podcast. What you'll see if you're playing it on the iTunes player, on any of the segments, on the closing segment, you'll see a couple of links that are there. Go ahead and click those and read about both the Beyond Budgeting as well as the Supporting Agile Adoption Group. I'd like to thank everyone. This has been a spectacular year. We're well over 15,000 replays on our podcast. I can't ask for anything better than a community coming together like we have over this year. I look forward to seeing you all, hopefully on the call. Not seeing, but hearing you all on the call in January.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This podcast is provided by the Agile Alliance for educational and informative purposes only. To find out more information about the member-supported Agile Alliance, please go to agilealliance.org. to find out about more upcoming events as well as different programs that are available to help you with your Agile journey.